called for the Great Alignment. Anya, carrying the combined essence of the original Guardians, stepped into the loom of realities. She realized that she couldn't just be one person. She had to be the bridge. She reached out, her consciousness expanding to touch the Sister Boniface of 1,000 worlds, the alchemist, the coder, the shaman, the astronaut. Golly, the collective voice of Boniface rang out across the multiverse. The molecular structure of the all is far more interesting than I suspected. Chapter 7. As Anya wove the threads of the different great slaughters together, a new figure appeared in the loom. It was Julian, the ancient guardian, but he was no longer alone. Beside him stood the original Sister Helena and the late Earl, their forms shimmering with a light that surpassed the singularity. "You have done well, Anya," Julian said, his voice a choir of echoes. "You have shown that mercy is not a single act, but a universal law. But there is one final thread to tie." He pointed to a dark corner of the loom where a single, cold reality remained. It was a world where Ronnie Panessa had won, where the convent was a pile of rubble, and where Sam and Ruth had never met. "This is the original debt," Helena whispered, "the timeline of pure consequence. It is the soil from which the stone heart grew. You cannot hide it, Anya. You must redeem it." Anya realized the task. She had to introduce the resonance of hope into a world of pure despair. She didn't use a miracle. She used a story. She dropped a single, ink-stained notebook into the dark reality, a notebook containing Ruth Penny's first draft of the quincentennial article. In that dark world, a young journalist found the notebook. She read about a village she didn't know, about a detective she hadn't met, and about a mercy she couldn't imagine. And she began to wonder, what if? That single thought was the reagent. The dark reality began to glow. The dissonance turned into harmony. The Weaver's reconciliation was complete. Chapter 74. The final pageant of the new all. The multiverse stabilized into a resonant symphony. To celebrate the new peace, a pageant was held not in a courtyard, but in the heart of the living cathedral. All the versions of Great Slaughter sent representatives. Leo stood as the master of ceremonies, wearing a tweed jacket that shifts colors like a nebula. Anya stood in the center, her habit woven from the light of 1,000,000,000,000 stars. Suddenly, the curtains of reality parted. Out stepped the original Sister Boniface, Sam Gillespie, and Ruth Penny. They weren't constructs or memories. They were the source. "I must say," Boniface said, looking at the multidimensional laboratory Leo had built, "your centrifuge is quite advanced. But does it handle the sediment of the soul?" "We're still working on that, Sister," Leo smiled. Sam looked at the infinite village they had inspired. "You did a good job, Leo. The perimeter is, well, there is no perimeter anymore." Ruth opened a new notebook, her eyes bright with the thrill of the ultimate headline. "The stone heart has finally, truly, become the world heart." The pageant ended with the handing over of the eternal key. But this time, it wasn't handed to a developer or a bishop. It was handed to the universe itself. Chapter 75. The Tapestry of New Beginnings. In the endless expanse of the Sanctuary of Light, where time was merely a ribbon of golden frequency, the three original Guardians, Boniface, Sam, and Ruth, sat together in a recreated version of the laboratory. The smell of Earl Grey tea mingled with the faint ozone of 1,000 solved mysteries. "We provided the baseline," Sam mused, looking at his gleaming badge. "But look what they've built upon it. Leo and Anya. They've taken Great Slaughter to places we never dreamed of." "The story only lives if it keeps being written, Sam," Ruth replied, her pen moving with a speed that defied the laws of physics. She was recording the births of 1,000,000 new acts of kindness across the multiverse. A static truth is a dead truth. We needed the dissonance to find the higher harmony. Sister Boniface was busy refining a new celestial compound. "Golly, did you know that when two souls choose mercy over vengeance, it creates a reaction that lights up a whole nebula? It's the most efficient energy source in existence." They realized that their work was no longer about protection, but about inspiration. They were the muses of mercy, the whispers in the ears of anyone who stood at a crossroads and chose the harder, kinder path. Chapter 7. As the multiversal pageant concluded, Anya and Leo found themselves standing at the edge of the new Genesis. The eternal key was no longer a physical object, but a living spark that they released into the void. "The stone heart isn't just a foundation," Anya whispered. "It's a seed." As the spark touched the center of the void, a new kind of great slaughter began to bloom. Not a village, but a state of being. It was the realization that no matter how complex the universe became, it would always be rooted in the simple, profound chemistry of the human heart. The mist rolled in, lavender and silver, protective and eternal. And within the mist, the stone heart beat on, steady and true, echoing for another 500 years, and then 500 more, until the end of time itself was just another beginning. Chapter 77. The Singularity of Curiosity. In the aftermath of the multiversal stabilization, a peculiar silence fell over the living cathedral. It was not the silence of a void, but the silence of a laboratory right before a breakthrough. Leo and Anya, now established as the cartographers of the ordinary, noticed a strange, fluctuating signal emanating from the deepest layer of the resonant archive. It was a question, not a question about how or when, but a fundamental why. The universe has reached absolute harmony, Leo observed, his multi-dimensional goggles reflecting the swirling patterns of the new Genesis. But without a problem to solve, the spark of curiosity is starting to dim. The golly is being replaced by a so be it. Anya realized that they were facing the ultimate paradox. In a world where mercy was the absolute law, was there still a need for the search? Longtit Kang, the CHLMTT, UNH, Anya Bunenjing Vang Van Se Nunglin HNG Hap, PHI Li, Ta Si, Un. Chapter 7. They traced the fading signal to a point where the sanctuary of light met the original void. There, they found a figure made of pure shadow, not the shadow of malice, but the shadow of unwritten stories. The figure introduced itself as the It was the collection of all the stories that had been lost, because they weren't perfect enough for the archive. It was the ink that had dried before it could touch the page. You have mapped the light, the unheard spoke, its voice like the scratch of a dry pen. But you have forgotten the power of the blank space. Without the unknown, your science is just a catalog, and your love is just a habit. Leo and Anya realized that the great forgetting was actually the universe trying to protect itself from boredom. They had to reintegrate the ink of the void into the song of mercy. They invited the unheard into the laboratory. Together, they began a new kind of forensics. The forensics of potential. They didn't look for what had happened. They looked for what could have been. Chapter 17. The Heart's Final Case. In this new collaborative laboratory, a final mystery emerged. It involved a single, unclaimed heart that was pulsing out of sync with the rest of the universe. It was a heart that belonged to no specific person, yet felt familiar to everyone. Using the combined tools of Boniface's curiosity, Sam's protection, and Ruth's truth, they began the investigation. They traveled back through every timeline, every St. Vincent, every great slaughter. They found the answer in the very first second of the original 1965 dawn. It was the heart of the village itself, not the buildings or the land, but the collective decision of a group of people to be a family. The mystery isn't a crime, Leo realized, his eyes filling with a new kind of light. The mystery is the bond. It's the catalyst that turns stone into spirit. They realized that the first case was the universe deciding to love itself. Sam, Ruth, and Boniface appeared one last time, no longer as muses, but as friends sitting around a simple wooden table. Well solved, children, Sam said, pouring a cup of tea that tasted of eternity. It's a headline I think I'll keep for myself. Ruth smiled, closing her notebook. Sister Boniface looked at the golden bird, then at Anya and Leo. Golly, the search is the only thing that never ends. And isn't that just grand? The bells of St. Vincent's tolled one last time, not for the past, not for the future, but for the present moment. The stone heart was gone, replaced by a heartbeat that resonated in the chest of every living being in the cosmos. Epilogue. The final frequency. Centuries, then millennia, then eons passed. The universe itself eventually grew old, but the resonance of St. Vincent's never faded. It had become the fundamental frequency of existence, the quiet song of mercy. The legend of the Stoneheart became the creation story of a new universe, one built not on the cold collision of particles, but on the warm resonance of a single act of kindness in a small English village. And in the center of that new universe, there remains a small, bronze-like energy field that pulses like a sun. It bears no name, but those who listen closely can hear the bells of a small chapel, tolling for a past that will always be the future. The story of great slaughter never ends. It is the story of a Zoda heart that was stone, the light that was seed, and the love that was, and is, and ever shall be, the home of every soul. The final